morning, everyone. Matt had told me that I was going to need to preach until lunch arrived, however long that took. I was hoping that the praise team just kept singing. Me speaking today seemed like a really good idea when Matt and I were sitting at the lunch table. Maybe not so much right now. He sent me a text and asked the title of my sermon, and I told him we could not call it a sermon. That would really make me nervous. But in honor of Thanksgiving, I thought I would start with a few Thanksgiving fun facts. So, did Thanksgiving officially begin with the Pilgrims? No, it sure didn't. Thanksgiving only became a public holiday during the Civil War in 1863. Abraham Lincoln declared that there should be a day of thanksgiving and prayer to God for our blessings. And he decided that it should be the last Thursday of November. It wasn't until Franklin Roosevelt came along and said, let's just do it the 4th, in case we needed an extra week between Thanksgiving and Christmas. Were there turkeys at the first Thanksgiving? No, there was no turkeys at the first Thanksgiving. A three-day meal was shared between the Pilgrims and the Wampanoag tribe in 1621. It was more likely they ate venison and a whole lot of seafood. Of the 3 utensils we used to eat, a fork, a knife, and a spoon, which one was not present at that first Thanksgiving dinner? The fork. They did eat with either a knife, a spoon, or their fingers. The fork was not brought by the Pilgrims, and Governor Winthrop of Massachusetts introduced it 10 years later, but it was really the 18th century before we started using a fork. So how many turkeys are consumed on Thanksgiving Day? An estimated 46 million turkeys are eaten on Thanksgiving. The average bird weighs 16 pounds. In 2010, more than 244 million turkeys were raised, and about 226 million of those were consumed in the United States. So was there green bean casserole at the first Thanksgiving? No, there wasn't. Green bean casserole came into being just some 50 years ago and was created by Campbell Soup. It came about when the company was making a new recipe book. Now Campbell sells about $20 million worth of cream of mushroom soup, most likely for people to make the casserole. Did they have cranberry sauce? The first Thanksgiving most likely did not involve cranberry sauce. While there was a plethora of cranberries for the Pilgrims to feast on, being one of the few fruits that are native to North America, sugar was a luxury. So what is the relationship between frozen TV dinners and Thanksgiving? Apparently, a part of the reason that Swanson started creating TV dinners in 1953 was because it needed to find something to do with the massive amount of leftover frozen Thanksgiving turkeys and the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. It began in 1924 with 400 employees marching off from Covenant Avenue and 145th Street in New York City. During this time, the parade was accompanied not with the oversized balloons of our favorite cartoon characters, but with live animals borrowed from the Central Park Zoo, from camels to elephants. Now for the real reason we're here today. Let's bow our heads. Father, I thank you for this day and for these people. Please let the words I speak here today come from you. Bless this service. In your name I pray. Amen. According to Wikipedia, the absolute authority on everything, grace has been defined not as a created substance of any kind, but as the love and mercy given to us by God, because God desires us to have it, not because of anything we have done to earn it. Ephesians 2:7 through 10 says, "Now God has us where he wants us, with all the time in this world and the next, to shower grace and kindness upon us in Jesus Christ. Saving is all his idea and all his work. All we do is trust him enough to let him do it. It's God's gift from start to finish. We don't play a major role. If we did, we would probably go around bragging that we had done the whole thing. No, we neither make nor save ourselves. God does both the making and the saving. He creates each of us by Jesus Christ to join him in the work. He does the good work he has gotten ready for us to do, work we had better be doing." This is the Good News translation. I love how it says that all we have to do is trust him enough to let him do it. Sometimes that's hard for us to do. Luke 6:35 says, "I tell you, love your enemies. Help and give without expecting a return. You'll never, I promise, regret it. Live out this God-created identity the way our Father lives toward us, generously and graciously. Even when we're at our worst, our Father is kind, and we should be kind too." And lastly, this from Romans 5:1. "By entering through faith into what God has always wanted to do for us, set us right with him, make us fit for him, we have it all together with God because of our Master Jesus. And that is not all. We throw open the doors to God and discover at the same moment that he has already thrown open the doors to us. We find ourselves standing where we always hoped we might stand, out in the wide open spaces of God's grace and glory, standing tall and shouting his praise." What remarkable promises from God. And to think we have done absolutely nothing to deserve it. It is freely given. He holds nothing back from us. We can't work our way into his grace. Of all the things I love so much about this church is that for us the word church is a verb and not just a noun. We've set out as a church to create authentic relationships with people. But no matter how many Thanksgiving boxes we fill and deliver, no matter how many homeless people we feed, no matter how many hungry people we feed, it will never change the grace that God bestows upon us. Hopefully, all these things we do as a church are a result of the grace he has given us. That our care of others is a reflection of how God cares for us. Over my son Will's lifetime, he has been the source of what I refer to as Will stories. Most of them involve a very exhausted guardian angel. He cringes when I tell any story about him, but has grudgingly given me permission to share this story. Several months ago, something that mattered a great deal was taken away from him. He was angry and hurt. It was everyone's fault but his. After he had time to think things through, he started to see that he might, just might, have played a role in what happened to him. A bit more time passed, and he came to understand and see that he really was completely responsible. In an incredible grown-up moment, he apologized for his actions without knowing if it would change anything, just because he had so much respect for the person involved. The thing that mattered so much was returned to him. On the way to church the next Sabbath, I told him I hope he appreciated the grace shown him. Poor Will. Sometimes he gets 3 sermons on Sabbath morning. The one I preach on the way to church, the sermon he hears when he gets to church, and then the one I preach on the way home. He's a captive audience, but doesn't really complain too much. I digress. He asked me what I meant about him receiving grace. I explained that grace is a gift we are given that we will never, ever deserve. He thought for a minute and said, well, that's like Jesus has done for us. I tried to act like I was unaffected by what he had just said. He so hates tears. I tried to keep my voice normal and to try to cry out of just one eye. And I said, yes, just like that. He then looked at me and smiled and said, then Luke is just like Jesus. I am so glad for church members that are a reflection of what God has done for us. And thank you, Luke, for reflecting God's grace to my son. You taught him a lesson in a minute that I have spent a lifetime trying to teach. Chris Tomlin, one of my favorite Christian artists, sings a song titled, Your Grace is Enough. My favorite line from that song is, your grace is enough. Heaven reaching down to us. Your grace is enough for me. God, I see your grace is enough. I'm covered in your love. Your grace is enough for me. I would like to share a parable with you this morning written by one of my favorite authors, Max Lucado. Other than my family and this congregation, Max Lucado is probably most responsible for me continuing to be an active member of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. On this, one of his many books is titled In the Grip of Grace. It forever changed the way I see my relationship with God. The parable goes like this. Once, there were 5 sons who lived in a mountain castle with their father. The eldest was an obedient son, but his 4 younger brothers were rebellious. Their father had warned them of the river, but they had not listened. He had begged them to stay clear of the bank lest they be swept downstream, but the river's lure was too strong. Each day the 4 rebellious brothers ventured closer and closer, until one son dared to reach in and feel the water. Hold my hand so I won't fall in, he said, and his brothers did. But when he touched the water, the current yanked him and the other 3 into the rapids and rolled them down the river. Over rocks they bounced, through the channels they roared, on the swells they rode. Their cries for help were lost in the rage of the river. Though they fought to regain their balance, they were powerless against the strength of the current. After hours of struggle, they surrendered to the pull of the river. The waters finally dumped them on the bank in a strange land, in a distant country, in a barren place. The savage people dwelt in the land. It was not safe like their home. Cold winds chilled the land. It was not warm like their home. Rugged mountains marked the land. It was not inviting like their home. Though they did not know where they were, of one fact they were sure. They were not intended for this place. For a long time, the 4 young sons lay on the bank, stunned at their fall and not knowing where to turn. After some time, they gathered their courage and re-entered the waters, hoping to walk upstream. But the current was too strong. They attempted to walk along the river's edge, but the terrain was too steep. They considered climbing the mountains, but the peaks were too high. Besides, they didn't really know the way home. Finally, they built a fire and sat down. We shouldn't have obeyed Father, they admitted. We are a long way from home. With the passage of times, the son learned to survive in the strange land. They found nuts for food, and killed animals for skins. They determined not to forget their homeland, nor abandon hopes of returning. Each day they set about the task of finding food and building shelter. Each evening they built a fire and told stories of their father and older brother. All 4 sons longed to be home again. Then one night, one brother failed to come to the fire. The others found him the next morning in the valley with the savages. He was building a hut of grass and mud. "I've grown tired of our talks," he told them. "What good does it do to remember? Besides, this land isn't so bad. I will build a great house and settle here." "But this isn't your home," they objected. "No, but it is if you don't think of the real one." "But what of Father? What of him? He isn't here. He isn't near. Am I to spend forever waiting his arrival? Am I making new friends? I'm learning new ways. If he comes, he comes. I'm just not going to hold my breath." And so the other 3 left their hut-building brother and walked away. They continued to meet around the fire, speaking of home and dreaming of their return. Some days later, a second brother failed to appear at the campfire. The next morning, his siblings found him on a hillside, staring at the hut of his brother. "How disgusting," he told them as they approached. "Our brother is an utter failure, an insult to our family name. Can you imagine a more despicable deed? Building a hut and forgetting our father." "What he's doing is wrong," agreed the youngest. "But what we did was wrong as well. We disobeyed, we touched the river, we ignored our father's warnings. Well, we may have made a mistake or two, but compared to the sleaze in the hut, we're saints. Father will dismiss our sin, but he's going to punish him. Come," urged the brothers, "return to the fire with us." "No, I think I'll keep an eye on our brother. Someone needs to keep a record of his wrongdoings to show Father." And so the 2 returned, leaving one brother building and one brother judging. The remaining 2 sons stayed near the fire, encouraging each other and speaking of home. Then one morning, the youngest son woke to find he was alone. He searched for his brother and found him near the river, stacking rocks. "It's no use," the rock-stacking brother exclaimed as he worked. "Father won't come for me. I must go to him. I offended him. I insulted him. I failed him. There is only one option. I will build a path back up the river and walk to our Father's presence. Rock upon rock I will stack until I have enough rocks to travel upstream to the castle. When he sees how hard I've worked and how diligent I have been, he will have no choice but to open the door and let me into his house." The last brother did not know what to say. He returned to sit by the fire alone. One morning he heard a familiar voice behind him. "Father has sent me to bring you home." The youngest lifted his eyes to see the face of his oldest brother. "You have come for us," he shouted. For a long time the 2 embraced. "And your brothers?" the eldest finally asked. "One has made a home here. Another is watching him. A third is building a path up the river." And so firstborn set out to find his siblings. He went first to the thatched hut in the valley. "Go away, stranger," screamed the brother through the window. "You are not welcome here." "I've come to take you home." "You have not. You have come to take my mansion." "This is no mansion," the firstborn countered. "This is a hut." "It is a mansion, the finest in the lowlands. I built it with my own hands. Now go away. You cannot have my mansion. Don't you remember the house of our father? I have no father. You were born in a castle in a distant land where the air is warm and the fruit is plentiful. You disobeyed your father and ended up in this strange land. I've come to take you home. The brother peered through the window at Firstborn, as if recognizing a face he had remembered from a dream. But the pause was brief, for suddenly the savages in the house filled the window as well. Go away, intruder, they demanded. It is not your home. You're right, responded the firstborn, but neither is it his. The eyes of the two brothers met again. Once more, the hut-building brother felt a tug at his heart. But the savages had won his trust. He just wants your mansion, they cried. Send him away. And so he did. Firstborn sought the next brother. He didn't have too far to walk. On the hillside near the hut, within eyesight of the savages, sat fault-finding son. When he saw Firstborn approaching, he shouted, "How good you are here to behold the sin of our brother! Are you aware that he turned his back on the castle? Are you aware he never speaks of home? I knew you would come. I have kept careful account of his deeds. Punish him. I will applaud your anger. He deserves every bit of it. Deal with the sins of our brother." Firstborn spoke softly. "Well, we need to deal with your sins first." "My sins?" "Yes, you disobeyed father." The son smirked and slapped at the air. "My sins are nothing. There is the sinner," he claimed, pointing to the hut. "Let me tell you of the savages who stay there." "I'd rather you tell me about yourself." "Don't worry about me. Let me show you who needs help," he said, running toward the hut. "Come, we'll peek in the windows. He never sees us. Let's go together." The son was at the hut before he noticed that Firstborn had not followed him. Next, the eldest son walked to the river. There he found the last brother, knee-deep in the water, stacking rocks. "Father has sent me to take you home." The brother never looked up. I can't talk now. I must work." "Father knows you've fallen, but he will forgive you." "He may," the brother interrupted, struggling to keep his balance, "but I have to go to the castle first. I must build a pathway up this river. First I will show him that I am worthy. Then I will ask for his mercy." "He's already given you his mercy. I will carry you up the river. You will never be able to build a path. The river is too long. The task is too great for your hands. Father sent me to carry you home. I am stronger." For the first time, the rock-stacking brother looked up. "How dare you speak with such irreverence? Father will not simply forgive me. I have sinned. I have sinned greatly. He told us to avoid the river, and we disobeyed. I am a great sinner, and I need much work." "No, my brother, you don't need much work. You just need much grace. The distance between you and our father's house is too great. You haven't enough strength nor the stones to build the road. That is why your father sent me. He wants me to carry you home." "Are you saying I can't do it? Are you saying I'm not strong enough? Look at my work. Look at my rocks. Already I can walk 5 steps. But you have 5 million to go." The younger brother looked at Firstborn with anger. "I know who you are. You're the voice of evil. You are trying to seduce me from my holy work. Get behind me, you serpent." He hurled at Firstborn the rock he was about to place in the river. "Heretic," screamed the path builder. "Leave this land. You can't stop me. I will build this walkway and stand before my father." and he will have to forgive me. I will win his favor. I will earn his mercy. Firstborn shook his head. Favor won is no favor. Mercy earned is no mercy. I implore you, let me carry you up the river. The response was another rock. So firstborn turned and left. The youngest brother was waiting near the fire when firstborn returned. The others didn't come? No. One chose to indulge, the other to judge, the third to work. None of them chose our Father. So they will remain here? The eldest brother nodded slowly. Yes, for now. And we will return to the Father? Asked brother. Yes. Will he forgive me? Would he have sent me if he wouldn't? And so the young brother climbed on the back of firstborn and began the journey home. All four brothers heard the same invitation. Each had an opportunity to be carried home by the elder brother. The first said no, choosing a grass hut over his father's mansion. The second said no, preferring to analyze the mistakes of his brother rather than admit his own. The third said no, thinking it wiser to make a good impression than an honest confession. And the fourth said yes, choosing gratitude over guilt. I'll indulge myself, resolves one son. I'll compare myself, opts another. I'll save myself, determines the third. I'll entrust myself to you, decides the fourth. May I ask a question this morning? As you've heard of the brothers today, which describes your relationship to God? Have you, like the fourth son, recognized your helplessness to make the journey home alone? Do you take the extended hand of your Father, or are you caught in the grip of his grace? The difference between mercy and grace: mercy gave the prodigal son a second chance. Grace gave him the feast.